Hello, welcome to the podcast Who Am I? With Stephen and with William. Today's episode is going to be discussing kind of relationships, development, mostly physical and emotional relationships in terms of romantic or biological, and how attraction can work within individuals, within society. So I guess my opening thing is it's kind of discussing, I guess, the biology for me, because I think it needs some context of evolution and history and how, I guess, where I always approach these conversations from is this primal instinct in us as a species to survive. Like that ultimately, that is, I guess, any living thing has some inherent need to maintain itself. And so, we've talked in the past about fight and flight responses, but obviously the main approach to continuing the species is procreation, is sex, and is having children, and I guess installing that within the society, because past, we go back to caveman times, you had traditional roles in a way, because it was very much I guess what I would class as we class it as uncivilized. I guess I wouldn't call it that, but less intellectual focused. I mean, would you say that?
Yeah, more physically focused and less spending time in the brain.
Yeah, like even I guess I don't know because I wasn't there. We're talking very subjectively here because we don't have that experience of in the history. Maybe in our DNA we do, but we don't necessarily have it consciously. And so even emotionally, it would be interesting to know more about the emotional experience of 10,000 years ago, as humanity was evolving in its tribes, in its early stages. Was it as complex as it is now? Because relationships tend to get very messy. Any, especially romantic relationship, physical attraction, emotional attraction, intellectual attraction, can be, a struggle for each individual. So did individuals still have that same struggle, do we think? Or do we think that because they were, again, in inverted commas, primitive, they didn't have that same emotional difficulty, maybe? Again, it's hypothetical, but what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not a big historian, but yeah, I believe the further back you go in time, the more people were concerned with their survival. Nowadays, we're not so worried. I mean, people do get murdered or get their life shortened by disease or all kinds of causes, but our survival is pretty well covered. I don't even know how to plant my own vegetables because I have the supermarket who takes care of everything. Well, and whatever the supply chain does before that, I don't even need to know about that, and I'm pretty much covered. All I need to do is get money, and then I can take care of my physical needs. And what do I do to get money? Well, I don't need to do farming or difficult physical labor. Like you said, we're very intellectual these days. We are looking to expand on the technological industry more and more. So smart is the new sexy, and that brings you back to attraction and relationships, right? People are always looking for mates, and often they don't even know why or what they're looking for in a mate. It's very instinctive or subconscious, but if you study those things, then it's really interesting, the kinds of things that we do care about. I watched a documentary once about what do men and women look for in the other, in their procreation partner, we could say. Well, women look for muscular men, right? Broad shoulders, big arms, because they are more likely to protect them and their offspring, and to be able to provide the nest they need to raise offspring. And men look for women that are healthy. Well, I mean, strength is a sign of health as well, but with women we don't need them to be as toned.
Yes.
Or we typically don't look for buff women. Speaking statistically, large.
Well, again, it's leftovers from evolution. It's that's the stuff that was needed for the hunting gathering, for your pack, tribe, community to survive. Is you needed those traits, and that was installed over thousands and thousands of years. That was the way it had to be, and so we are the leftover generations where that had to be the case, at least in Western society, in a or a developed country, where that is still there. I think it's still in our DNA, but we as a culturally and individually, because again, we're talking about, again, as I think in every single podcast we've done, I think I've made the same statement, is that we make comments about generalizations, but the importance is the specifics of individuals. And both are important to discuss, but both, they're not separate. We acknowledge both and we respect and love both. But to talk about some things, you have to talk about the general side of things. For some things, you can talk about the specific. And in this situation, the generalization, yes, the attraction to muscles or curves, whatever, is a generalization, because there are so many different things about attraction, especially in our society where we have more time and more emotional time, and more intellectual time to think about what we want. We don't have to follow our basic needs. Again, we talk about procreation, but we don't need to follow that. We don't have to have children. Like, this is like, in the past, again, 10,000 years ago, whatever, it was kind of seen as you had to, in a way, because small tribe, to increase the tribe's and even several hundred years ago, you had to have more children to work. You had to have, like, to be able to work on a farm or something, or go out and do jobs to help provide for the family. You'd have kids. Also, the kids would die. Like, we live in a society now where healthcare is so positive in a way that, mortality rate, etc. And also contraceptive, family planning. This, a lot of human beings, we can't actually control. Well, we can control our base needs, but we struggle to control our base needs. So having sex is a primary instinct. And when you get in a relationship with a person or companionship, then you want to share that with them again, physically, emotionally, and you struggle to stop, in a way, if that makes sense. So if logically not having any more children is a good idea because it's going to drain your resources, most people can't stop themselves from doing that. They will have more children if they didn't have contraceptive, or if they didn't have family planning, if they didn't have education. That's what has happened in the past and still happens today. So I find it very, very complex, very beautiful that we have more choice and freedom now. We have a lot more freedom to be able to, and education, again, contraceptive as well, to not have to be ruled by our basic need for this could be seen as a family ideal. Like, we both have our own perspective on this, I think. So feel free to share with me what your, I guess.
We can always call it the traditional family picture.
Yeah, if that's, well, like, that's the concept. Do you favor that? Do you not favor that? Do you? Again, it's just discussion topics.
Yeah, I want to get into another point first that you mentioned about the desire to keep the species going. We have over 7 billion people on the planet now, and so I don't think we are in danger of going extinct anytime soon, by means of not having enough offspring. There are other dangers. Maybe the climate, maybe we kill ourselves or each other, depending how unified you look at the humankind. But there's no need for everyone to have at least 2 children to increase the population. So it's interesting how, yes, we still have a lot of drives inside of us genetically that are no longer necessary. They may again in the future, so maybe it's good for them to last a bit longer than they're absolutely needed. But I also wonder whether people really see themselves as a member of the whole species and being interested in doing what's good for the entire species rather than just for themselves or just their family or just their race even.
It's not a very conscious thing, is it? For a lot of people, it's biologically programmed into us. Again, libido, sex drive, to procreate. And some people it's not. Some people are asexual and they don't have that desire. But I think for the majority of the species, as humans.
So I think their desires for prolonging your genetic material on several levels. Yes, I want humanity to keep on living. There's a strong drive for parents to have their children survive. Stronger than for themselves. If you're in a situation where you have to choose between yourself surviving or your child, then typically parents will choose the life of the child, which makes sense on many levels. But besides just humanity surviving, I believe people have an instinct to have their individual genetic material last longer.
Very true.
And this is just a theory, but I think that's why they are most of the time attracted to people who share their features. So same skin color. I don't know about hair color, but culture and language also go together a lot. So that's why I'm not so certain about this theory.
There's an interesting contradiction there because nature loves diversity. Nature needs, for it to survive, it needs to have a big pool of genetic material. But often it is, I think it's more personally, it's just me, I don't know the details, but I think it's more of a psychological thing to want similar. That's more a comfort thing or more a psychological reassurance thing because it's not different. And I think genetically, actually, if the genetics side of us would actually probably prefer the diversity.
That makes sense.
And I think that's a good kind of segue to attraction, maybe to talk about attraction and how that could work, because I'm always fascinated by it. From a young age, it crippled my brain and my heart to understand why there's always such in the upbringing that I was brought up in, why there's such a narrow scope for attraction. There was being raised Christian, being raised in that environment, it was very much this is what kind of you should be attracted to. Again, that family values, that side of things. Good, wholesome person who is a female who is nurturing and motherly and caring. And those weren't the things that I was actually, I found them beautiful, but they weren't necessarily the things that I was attracted to. I was attracted to like more assertiveness and emotional intelligence and intellect. And those things are included in at times. And actually very what was classed as male characteristics. So a lot of my teenage and even adult life, I have got to know certain women, because I'm heterosexual, and liked them and attracted to them, and they ended up being gay. They ended up being lesbian, because those physical and personality traits are what I was more attracted to.
I see. Okay.
and their style and the way they.
I thought you were saying they were heterosexual
Oh no!
until you met them and then they became lesbian.
No, well, I put them off of the male species. I wouldn't be surprised. That's brilliant. That is amazing. So yeah, it was always fascinating to me to understand in a very small degree the importance of diversity, but yet the contradiction of being told that that's not normal or that's not what's right. And I found that very difficult. And also the emotional side of things. Like I was a very emotional teenager, and people often said I was gay. They were like, "Oh, you must be gay if you're." And again, if I was gay, that's fine. Either way, it's fine. I'm not like I'm not like, "Oh, don't say I'm gay." It'd be awesome if I was gay. A lot of things would have probably made more sense. But I knew I wasn't. I knew that I was attracted to women, and so it baffled me. At least sexually attracted to women, because I think that again, I thought about lots over the years that I could actually have a non-sexual relationship with a man and actually still be quite happy in that relationship, because it's love. I love that person the way they are. And so it's always been, a fascinating experience to go through from a teenager to now. At what, again, I hate this term, but right and wrong, because in my opinion, as long as it's age of consent, which is an interesting discussion itself, but and to adults, what's that word? What I'm looking for? Consenting adults. Then again, that whole love is love concept. From a young age, I never understood why there was. I guess we're on to the LGBT stuff now. Why there was such discrimination? Yeah, it never made any sense to me.
The more we speak about this topic, the more I realize how complex it is, and never be able to do it justice. But even in the science community, there is no consensus on a lot of these questions. So I was interested in talking about this just to gain more perspective, because I have not been exposed to many of the questions and the multiplicity of answers and approaches that people have found. So I wanted to learn more about your perspective, and you started to give it, so thank you. I can confirm what you said about expectations from parents and society and church community about who I should end up with and get married to. We can talk about marriage or related things as well, if you want. I remember my father saying, just don't bring home a Fatima, or stuff like that. And I thought, wow, talking about Turkish or Middle Eastern women in general. And I thought, okay, that's, I don't think that's from any particular Turkish person he's met in the past. I think it's just a fear of the unknown, of the foreign, and maybe also this genetic thing that we mentioned earlier about we want our genetic material to stay clean or the same. But as you said, mixtures are also useful biologically and attractive. I remember seeing a YouTube video about an American girl in Japan, and she said she's half American, half Japanese, which is highly sought after. You can become a model more easily, for example, than a purely Japanese girl, because for some reason it's just attractive to, I guess, the men, or also the women are jealous of them.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting, and diversity, can be interesting and should not be shunned.
No, it really shouldn't. I'm gonna get to the LGBTQ stuff in a minute. Let's get back to attraction for a little while, because again, I guess that's a really interesting topic, because in the past, like now, again, we have this what's fed to us through social media, like that's what defines attractiveness these days. Like what most people see as attractive, they've been told that's what's attractive. like the whole supermodels and different fashions are attractive at different times. Like, men used to, back in the 1800s, men wore heels. Like, that was part of their outfit, the boots, heels. At certain times, they would have longer shoes, a shoe with a curl-on top. And that's what was seen as fashionable and attractive. Now it's, women wear heels to show off, like, define the calf muscles and that kind of thing. It's almost like, again, the fashion industry and the media industry just use different strategies to dictate what they can sell. In the past, it was seen as attractive to be pale. Not like, if you were
to the sun. Yeah.
exposed to the sun more, you were seen as common because you would work, like, working in fields and stuff. So to be pale was attractive. And then now it's more tanned is now currently, like, at various times seen as more attractive in mainstream. Fake tan, sunning beds, all this kind of stuff. That's what people aim for because you have the money to be able to go in the sun, and go on holidays and that kind of stuff. Being like, because now we have these terms about weight and fat and all that.
Body mass index.
Yeah, all that just ridiculous, in my opinion, stupidity, and obsession over that, that causes a lot of problems. In the past, it was seen, if you were bigger, if you had more body mass, in terms of, yes, you were seen as, again, wealthy because you could afford more food. You were so therefore that was attractive. Yeah, and you see all the paintings from the Renaissance and stuff, and the females look nothing like what is projected now as attractive, and it shows you that attraction is very dictated by society.
Yeah, I could think of two more examples about Polynesian places, in the Pacific. There are, I believe, still tribes where the women walk around topless. The climate is such that it's possible, and that is totally normal. It's like seeing a man topless.
Yeah, I love that example. That example is so important to show us how sexualized the body has become in our societies, where it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that could ever be different, but it can be. And another one, I think from a report by Peter Joseph, the guy from the Zeitgeist movement, on the Fiji Islands, before there was television, women were healthy mentally. And maybe they were one of these tribes where people are bigger boned in general, and where skinny women are not considered attractive. I read that about Tonga, for example. I don't know if it's still the case, but it used to be. And then when television came in, American television shows, over time, the people, especially the women, looking to be, I don't know how it works exactly, but women look a lot at other women to learn what they need to do about their appearance to become more attractive to men. And so after time, women became bulimic and depressed. And you can apparently trace it back to the introduction of American television on Fiji. Yeah, this was on the Fiji Island.
Makes sense. Like, again, I have so much hope for our younger generation, but I also am so sorry for them and what they have to go through, all the Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and just how it's also body focused.
Yeah.
It's also like, how does an individual have the psychological resilience to not let that just like make them feel insecure or make them feel worried and about themselves and if they're attractive or not? And they shouldn't be worrying about that. They shouldn't like young girls at like 10, 11, 12, and boys, all worried about if they're going to appear attractive to the other sex or same sex, depending on their orientation. And it shouldn't be a thing. Like, the damage that's caused is...
There shouldn't be need for a hashtag no filter.
Right? Yes. Yes.
You should just be happy with the way you look. Obviously, you can do. I could do more to appear, put together, or clean,
Yeah.
or
I mean,
healthy.
I could trim a bit better. I could wear a suit more, or whatever. But like that's not real. Again, it's a lot.
But then we go far beyond that. And again, it's interesting what the research comes up with in terms of biological explanation. Um, I even approached a girl at a conference once who had on pink lip gloss, and I guess I was in my very just matter of fact state, not thinking about the interactions and the attraction, the consequences. But I was fortunate enough that she was not against this at all. You know how when you analyze how women work and you tell them to their face, it can be very counterproductive. But I told her, oh, I found out recently, or I heard from a scientist recently that pink lipstick is supposed to give the appearance of having plenty of estrogen, and therefore being what's the word? Fruitful. There's another word. Okay.
Yeah.
And make yourself more attractive to men that way, because that is something that men are looking for, subconsciously at least. Will this woman be able to give me healthy children?
Yeah. And yeah, I'm sure that went down well.
Yeah. She thought it was funny and honest, and those are the types of things I think of when I see makeup. I think, yeah, I guess you're appealing to a part of me, and I don't give this part high priority. It is a part of me that I cannot switch off. Sometimes it bothers me, and I wish I could switch it off, because I want to focus on other things in women. But other times I see the utility and also the happiness that can come from it, obviously. But I guess I'm just the type of person who needs a girl to be smart and confident, more so than physically attractive.
It's realizing that doesn't dictate if they are smart or attractiveness, because that's preconceptions that can arise in the other extreme, where the judgments come in just because you wear makeup or wear certain clothes or whatever. Like that's a really, like, I'm not talking about you, I just mean society in general, where there's double standard where it shouldn't matter.
And it's sad that women who are smart and confident feel the need to.
Well, they may enjoy it as well. They may enjoy it. Like this, again, they actually themselves may actually enjoy putting on the makeup and doing those things. So there's a very fine line and there that is difficult for two white privileged males to talk about, because we don't understand what it's like to be a woman. And so we have our discussion comments and our perspective, I guess. But it's up to us to encourage men and women to be themselves. And if it is what they want to do, it's just, we try, again, as a podcast, to help people understand themselves enough that they're not being influenced by external situation.
Men and women have a lot to gain from speaking to each other very openly about how they perceive themselves and the others. And talking about things like makeup and attraction, just blatantly, just put it out on the table, because we have these preconceptions and illusions about ourselves and each other that are just fed over and over and prolonged, and they might, and you say in some cases it is actually what a woman wants to put on makeup, even though she might not fully understand her psychology behind it, and that's fine.
Society should be so much less judgmental of women. Like, that's one thing I've always been fascinated by, is just how critical we all are of what, like, so rarely like do we go, oh, that man shouldn't be wearing that or looking that way. Like who the swear word are we to comment on it or worry about it? Like, this is getting a bit personal, but there's a scenario where through the Christian upbringing, there is so much emphasis on what women wear, and to me it's evil. Like there's so much like the responsibility. So the preconception is that basically women should dress conservatively because it helps men not have sexual thoughts, and that's such bull. I'm going to say it. I don't care on the podcast. You dub it out if you want, but it's such bullshit. Like it's so evil. But we should be more focusing on men having like better respect and understanding that to leer at a woman or to degrade them on whatever they wear, women should be able to walk down naked on the street and it'd be fine. So should a man, technically. As if there's no kids around, again, it's a whole different ball game. But I just mean in terms of what we should and shouldn't wear. And it's like, actually, no one should be dictating what we can and can't wear, because we should all be teaching each other to have respect for each other. Not that a woman shouldn't wear a top that shows her belly or whatever. You know, does the parent ask the boy, does his t-shirt show his belly or his arms or his, it's so much focus on it being the woman's responsibility. And that is very psychologically traumatic in early years. And it, over time, can appear to create a sense of self-worth, or because that's the Christian side of things. That's what they teach. They teach, oh, give you self-worth. And it's like, well, no, actually, you're repressing a lot of their ability to express themselves, and both sexually, physically, and later on in life, it'll all come out, and usually 9 out of 10 times, and I've seen it time and time again, it comes out an explosion of rebellion because you've suppressed that side of things. Later on in life, they're like, well, I missed out on my experiences as a teenager or whatever. I'm now going to do whatever I want because I don't feel like I had that. I've seen it a lot. And it worries me. It worries me that, again, not even just in Christian stuff, but in mainstream society, especially when it comes to rape victims. Like, there's a massive flaw in our justice system.
Giving the woman responsibility for being raped, right?
Like, how evil is that? Like, I don't understand how that's even a thing. Like, to think that just because of what you wear, you deserve to get raped. Like, it makes me sick. Like, and I don't get why we're at that point in society. Like, I don't.
So even though you said this is a topic that goes personal, I think it's good that you addressed it, and in a calm manner, because I have some personal contention in this area as well. But I'm glad you went to two extreme cases, the rape example and walking in the street naked, just to make the point even more obvious. I think that's a useful method to where the principle is not about the degree, but the actual, the whole idea of should a woman take into consideration what feelings she causes in a man who sees her in public. Right? So I think that's useful to frame that way. I don't see things exactly the same way.
Go for it.
I don't have full control over how I feel as a reaction to what I see. And I would not like to see a naked woman while I'm walking on the street to the supermarket. Because sexual feelings are, in my view, appropriate in some settings and inappropriate in other settings. And I am not the only one responsible for whether I have them or not.
Oh yeah, having them is different from acting on them.
That's a good point.
So having the sexual feeling, yes, that's fine. That's normal response. I mean, what comes next? Whether you like, sorry, I keep interrupting you. Sorry.
No, that's a very good point. I hadn't thought about that distinction, but you're right.
Yeah, those are feelings are important. Having that response is a beautiful thing. Like
absolutely. I when I wish that I had more control over when I have those feelings and when not. I don't know how healthy that is, and how much I am just trying to fulfill the expectations implanted in me by my upbringing and my faith. I agree that those influences can be suppressing our feelings and can be very unhealthy. There's I don't know if it's a phase, but I guess for some people it takes a lifetime to understand how they themselves work in regards to sexuality and feelings and acting on it. I think it's not just puberty where you are confronted with these questions.
It's your whole life.
Yeah. Okay. Good. It's good that I'm not the only one who thinks
from all the people that I've spoken to, all the interactions I've had, it is definitely an ongoing process. Some people find it early. Some people develop as they go. And some people, they may never find it.
And something that I've heard from several people is, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm out of the dating game and just settle down." With be it staying single for the rest of your life or married or whatever you have found for yourself and perhaps a partner, because there is so much chaos and uncertainty in trying to understand yourself and others, and then the combination. So. That is a very difficult terrain to navigate. But I'm glad to hear that I'm not the only one who has ongoing questions or new questions, as you age.
Yeah.
I still believe that I'm not the only one responsible for how I feel, and that a woman should also consider what she is triggering in other people, even in other women. When I clothe myself and groom myself, I am also considering what other people will think of me. And that puts pressure on me, which can be negative and unhealthy. So I understand that aspect. But it also puts pressure on me to uphold societal norms, which can be good or bad.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Everyone should be able to have their choice. Like you should be able to do what you want, the way you feel is healthy for you, and not feel criticized or judged, and vice versa.
But how do you put people with different ideas of what is good for them in the same society? Because we're not radical individualists. We interact. And the only interaction we've talked about so far is just seeing each other. There's more.
This topic is so vast. Like I didn't realize that this was going to go this way in this discussion, but I think it's been good.
It's just a topic that I still have a lot of strong feelings about and unresolved quarrels inside of myself. And so I'm more interested in working on that. And the method I will use is not to go around telling people to change, that I will work on myself. And perhaps I will be less hurt when I see that someone has different standards than me.
Yeah.
Because I am genuinely saddened and hurt when I see that someone lives their life a different way than I do. Now that doesn't mean that I feel the need to change them.
Yeah, is that you're taught that way, or is that because you are that way?
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's say it's purely because I'm taught that way. Then that still doesn't give me the right to give the other person the full responsibility. Sometimes
both are responsible, definitely, but I think it's because you go from one extreme to the other. Like we talked about this before with when a minority is suppressed, to get rid of the suppression, you have to go to the other extreme and then find the middle ground. And I think that's what's happening with women, is that to go from this, because they have been suppressed and they still are suppressed in society compared to men, the majority of men. And it's gone to an extreme where there are now extremes where actually men do feel suppressed as well now because of, it's a whole other discussion, because of they feel they've lost their place in society and all that kind of stuff. And the balance will come in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, hopefully, where men start to adapt as well. And we come to some middle ground. And I think that's what a lot of the sexual revolution has been over the last 100 years for women, because they have been chained to men most of society in history.
Yeah, not too long ago, just a few decades ago, a girl, when she turned 18, was expected to get married because there was almost no chance for a woman to support herself. So to get an education, to get a job. You've heard about women from 100 years ago who were really good authors who wrote under a male pseudonym just to get published because it was impossible otherwise. So since we have started, I'm saying deliberately started getting rid of those restrictions, women are more able to support themselves materially. But yeah, I think this topic of empowerment and individualism and what this does for the relationship and balance and extremes is too much and should be a topic of another podcast.
Good. Yeah. Okay. We can skip on to that another time.
Yeah.
Let's go to.
But we're not done for today.
No, not yet. I don't think so. Unless you are. I'm not. I'm quite happy to continue.
No, this is exciting.
Yeah.
I have one more example of appearance, because so far we've only talked about the cultures that we're mostly exposed to. What about, say, Muslim culture? On the Trevor Noah show, there once was a woman with a headscarf. I forget the Arabic name for it. And she was
There's a burqa, there's the
hijab.
Yeah.
With varying degrees of veiling.
Yes.
Of hiding your hair or face. So in her case, she was just covering her hair. What I see most of the time in Germany. And it was super interesting because she was doing what I want to see more, for men and women, to discuss these things and not just keep building the expectations and suppression. She said, when Western men and women see me and other women with a headscarf, they say, "Oh, don't let other men, men oppress you and force you to wear a headscarf." And she said, what are they thinking? That's not the reason I do this, which I believe. She said, this is how I show respect for God and for myself. It's a totally different paradigm. But
is it a different paradigm?
Well, in our Christian white society, we also show respect for God and ourselves, but in other ways. Is that what you're talking about?
If God is again, I'm getting into controversial topics here, but if God is white, male, or just male being, why does he require women to be, the respect that she is showing for God or her God? Is that not just an extension potentially of the patriarchal writings that have come down through the thousands of years?
It's a good question. I don't know enough about Islam and the Quran to answer.
Yeah, again, I'm just throwing out questions.
It's a good question. I mean, we all, like you said, we don't walk naked in the street, so we all have some kind of norm that we live, and it comes from religion or other sources. And it's a huge mix, and we're trying to somehow live together in peace.
Yes, and again,
it can be difficult at times.
Who am I to judge? Ultimately, again, I'm throwing out. The importance is that it's her. She has made that choice consciously, and it is sacred to her. So
That
she
is
can
what
stay.
she was saying.
Yeah.
And
So for that reason, it's, of course she should be encouraged. That's fine. It's giving people the knowledge that all options are available.
yeah,
That's why I get so passionate about it. It's not because I think that it should be this way, even though that's how it probably comes across sometimes. I'm just making sure there is a balanced argument, so that people are informed and educated.
yeah,
Like from my own experiences within religion and my happiness that has been gained through sexual liberation, like through being able to express myself sexually and not feel like I'm doing something wrong, because I'm not. Like I know I'm not. I have never done anything that has actually hurt anyone.
mhm,
Like to call those things that I'm doing a sin, in that context, is in my opinion, again me, is evil, because it causes me to hate myself, and therefore, if I hate myself, that's not love. And I search for all things that are happy and love and positive. And so once I broke away from that previous mindset into the current mindset, like it fills me with so much joy and again freedom and liberation, and that I can be in a relationship and have sex with someone and form that connection, that bond, without these preconceived notions that we should be in marriage, or that one day we should have children or something. It's like those kind of things. Um, it's brought a lot of happiness and stability and ability to express myself emotionally and sexually, um, in a way that, because it was being suppressed, caused me a lot of mental health problems.
mhm.
Um,
And having that feeling of liberation and regaining health is a strong indicator that you're
yeah,
going in the right direction. You mentioned earlier the sexual revolution. Um, I don't remember any names, but in the 60s, there were a few just American researchers who were just sick of this, the preconceptions on what is right and wrong in sex. And
yeah,
so they just went against the taboo and just did scientific experiments
yeah.
with
They made a
sexual
TV show about it
organs.
recently. Yeah, they made a TV show about it recently. Um, and yeah, it's a fascinating concept. Carry on. It's fascinating.
They answered so many questions. They demystified sex and the body so much, which I think is very good.
Yeah,
Now, some people might say, well, don't you think anything negative came from that? Don't you think we're now too liberal with our bodies and our opinions on how we use them and how we treat each other? And from what you're saying, I get the feeling you think that no, in general, this is a good thing. This is the right direction. Now, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know if perhaps society is doing itself a disservice by becoming more and more liberal.
yeah,
I don't know why God is so interested in what we do with our penis and vaginas.
yeah, yeah,
Why is it so important to him?
yeah,
I don't know. But at the same time, I don't know why it was so important to him that Eve would not, and Adam would not eat of the fruit.
yeah,
Is there something intrinsically bad about the fruit? I don't think so. I think it was pretty much an arbitrary commandment that he chose, and he could have probably chosen any other thing. But and I don't know if everything in Genesis is to be interpreted literally. If there was actually a tree and a fruit and a garden, or if it was more a state of the mind.
or metaphorical
But
potentially.
but I do believe that God gave them a commandment, that it was pretty much arbitrary what that commandment was, that there was nothing intrinsically wrong with the act that he forbade, and that they were then tested whether they would live according to that commandment or break it. And we know and we're told in the Bible that it was transgression to eat of the fruit, but that it was necessary for God's plan to progress. Because they would have otherwise stayed in the garden without it.
And the story is fascinating in itself because so a lot of the, again, its interpretation is like we as human beings have been given, potentially, again, let's use the concept that God is real, that these things were given to us as a form of instruction or just important stories to have. It's up to us as human beings how much actual weight we put on things. We are the creators. We decide what is okay and not okay ultimately. And you talk about that story and you talk about, okay, Adam and Eve, blah blah. Some religions say, you have to be absolved of that original sin. Some religions say you don't. And that's their interpretation. And actually, God probably just sits back and just goes, you're all missing the point. He probably just goes, it's just a story to give you some education on what happened in the past. You don't need to suddenly overthink this. And also, from my experiences of observing religions, being in religion, is that if there is a deity, that they, again, like it, he, she, whatever, loves paradox and contradiction. Like, if you look at anything in our society, in evolution, in the universe, physics, science, gravity, blah, blah, so many things contradict each other, but still work and still live in the overall system. And I don't understand why we as human beings can't understand that and just go, it's okay for that thing to be that way. And it's okay for that thing to be that way. Even though they may seem like they're two separate parts, they're actually part of a whole. And that, I guess, kind of is a segue to what this whole thing was probably supposed to be originally about, is the LGBT stuff. So, we've mentioned it a few times in discussions, that, and it's a massive thing at the moment in Europe, especially because countries like Poland and Hungary are really strictly implementing older laws that had been gotten rid of to suppress and to discourage and to, not even just discourage, to blatantly discriminate against those who have same-sex attraction, who are transgender, who fit under all that the LGBTQ plus bracket. And I've always been fascinated why there is such a focus on that. Like, why is there so much energy by society? Because again, it's not just religion, it's society. Even before religious stuff, there is suppression of this minority, these people, these individuals, and a hatred for them from a lot of society. And I've always just been, I know that some of it comes from religion and the whole, but is it more than that? Is it a biological thing where a lot of people discriminate, again, because it's different, because it's the underlying potential contradiction to survival of the species, going back to what we talked about at the start. Like, if everyone, which I don't think is possible personally, but because it's all individual, if everyone, let's say, over time realized that they were, well, it wouldn't happen in my opinion. It wouldn't happen. It's because it's just diversity. It would stay. There'd be enough heterosexuals to continue the species, and there'd be enough same-sex to just be who they are. And from a biological point of view, I don't think it's an issue, but maybe somewhere in our DNA, for some people, they feel they have to protect against it. I don't know. I'm just throwing questions out there because I always like that.
Hi folks, this is William in editing mode. At this point, Steve and I decided to interrupt the discussion because it had gone on enough to make up a whole episode on its own, just talking about attraction and biology. And so we will continue this topic, focusing more on LGBTQ questions in the upcoming episode. See you then.